Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs with Dr. Contrast live here. I thought it's good to have you on board today, folks. And I just thought I'd take a moment here and do a little bit of an overview and just an introduction is what we're going to be moving into here today. Put a title on this stream today, this project, the program today of the magic of line weight. And I think there's been a lot of conversation by telephone or over email status over the last few weeks about line weight and how to generate a sketch and how to give it soul or personality. And I thought I'd take a moment, go back in and just kind of explain a little bit of the theory behind the magic of line weight and how it functions and what it does for us and how it begins to generate more enthusiasm in our sketches. So I'll just start out with a very simple premise here today. And I just want to let you know that this is probably the first of maybe two or three. We'll start with some very fundamental things with line weight behind it to support that treatise. Then we'll move into things like product design, architecture, transportation, and show how that all begins to apply. So as we said last Tuesday when we finished up the tank program, I thought it was interesting to go back into some more fundamental things. For example, I need to go back and review some of these things as well to keep myself fresh. But I think the real record here was to go back in and take it, just slow it all down a little bit. We've gone to the last, last 8, 9 streams. It was a very complicated sketch rendering work from beginning to end. And I think it was good to go through that. And I think I saw, if you looked at some of those streams I put on over the last few weeks, I practiced this whole line weight thing. But again, I thought it was interesting to go back just to kind of bear it all down a little bit and take it into a build system here, fundamental theory first, then go into application, theory and application, and show how this all begins to function. So I started here with a sketch. I'm going to go through a very quick little demo here. It all begins with really good, solid perspective, as you well know. To me, the real foundation of great sketch rendering is the understanding of perspective and how it begins to function and what it does for us. And I think it's great to know also that when you get into perspective, that can be your greatest friend and your tremendous ally. So many people dread it because it gets into this mathematical stuff. Yeah, there's a part of that to it, but at the same time, there's much more emotion behind using perspective and how to dramatize a shape, how to begin to flatter a form. That all comes back to line weight understanding, and again, how to use that as a propulsion system into really projecting our sketches from a very strong, bold message container. So again, here, just with the horizon line, getting the VPs right, left and right laid down there. And I'm going to use this illustration about setting up platforms, for example, in 2-point perspective. I just lightly laid in some drive lines, set up a platform to show you how this whole concept of getting line weight begins to work for us. I've always believed, and it's a Meadism, Sid Mead, a tremendous dissertation on line weight. And you use that line weight as a method of things closest to us begin to really hammer up and really hit hard as they begin to move back in space, fade. And I think it's so true, and I'll show you here what that means by illustration, how we don't have to worry about outlining the whole form and how that becomes absolutely fatal in our sketches. When we outline everything, it just flattens everything out. But if we use line weight to its magical end and its purpose, it really begins to project a sense of spirit in our sketches. It gives it much more personality. So if we have a leading edge, what this is here, this is now referred to as the leading edge of a cube or any surface we deal with, building, product, etc. But if that leading edge is so powerful, then as we come down to the baseline here, ground line, and you go right and left on this whole idea, using line weight to get this idea of things closest to me, really hit it hard, emphasize it, and as it goes back in space, fade it. So it begins to look like this. It comes back in, down to ground line. Let me just move this pad up just a bit here. Come down to ground line and really beef up this weight. And beef it up at that intersection and really let it hit it hard and then just let it fade back in space. Rotate around again, come back the same way with this. You can rotate the pad around here just for a moment. And again, same thing, line weight up, let it fade. There's no need to go back in and give it any more personality. I can come back in, no need to go back and outline the whole shape. You can come back in and add a secondary on top of that, for example. Line weight, closest to me, hit it, fade it. Notice, all of a sudden, you begin to generate some very interesting surface work here. And it's closest to me, beef it. As it fades back, let it go. Now, if the light source is coming in, let's say from the left-hand side, great. Now I come back in and say from the left-hand side, it's a bit more, a little bit of touch back there, and there, and a little bit there, and it tells me where the end of that form is without going back and outlining the whole shape. It gives a real sense of spirit or balance. When you come back in and add a surface to it, and say we break this up, and we go back in and break the shape up. Again, closest to me, weight it up. As it goes back in space, fade it. Turn it around just a bit here, pardon me, just let it fade. And there it is. If there's a bit of an offset in that shape, super. Come back in and drop it down just a touch. Do that. Now, Interesting. Even though the light source is from the left, it's a valley. Show the change of pace, dark to light. Notice how all the rhythm is working. Darkest darks against lightest lights. Come back in again behind it all. There's no need to outline that whole form because that line weight magic is telling me where the surfaces are and puts a lot of spirit and emphasis in the sketch. Same thing, for example, that's laying horizontally. When you go vertically, like this little example here, again, horizon line, vanishing points, how the drive lines are set up. Now we come back in and go the other way. Closest to me in the vertical, hit it. Tell me where it is. Come back inside that. Again, thick, thin. As I go back again, I go back in space, weight it up, thick, back to thin. And again, turn it upside down here again, giving it spirit. Come back in through, thick, really weight it up, and then let it fade. Hit it, let it fade. Look at the difference in the drama there. And when you begin to put a little surface work into this thing, notice what happens too. You can go back in and do the same thing here. Put a light line through here. And run that right through the shape. Again, closest to me, I can cut this back just a bit or overhang it and come back out here and add another form to this and just change the shape very dramatically by coming over the top of that form. Again, notice again, closest to me, weight it up, let it blend in, come back in, weight it up, let it fade back, closest to me, and let it fade away. Again, closest to me, fade away. Underneath, draw through it, and again, into form. And then just let it fade. And again, indicate where the light source might be coming from. Look at the spirit in that sketch. There's not a lot there, but the whole idea of getting those weights to change tempo is what it really comes down to. Now I can go back in here and put a bit of tone underneath this thing by coming in and just, again, darkest darks next to lightest lights. And as I go underneath that surface, let it fade back to paper. Now, why is that done? Well, the strange phenomenon in doing rendering work or illustration work like that is simply this. It's darkest because as it moves back in space, it picks up reflected light. So that's why you leave a little bit of that paper in there to give it some sort of magic. It's really interesting how that begins to function. And the same thing up on top. If I want to add more definition to the shape, I come back in and just put a break in it. Again, darkest darks, let it fade. Take that line underneath and let it fade. Another great line here. Now, if I come back and add a little bit of a window or a form shape in here or a drop in it, I come back in, light source again. Notice, dark, the light. And I've just illustrated a very simple form, but it's given it some drama or some personality. All the patterns and all the rhythms, for example, darkest darks next to lightest lights, next to darkest darks, next to lightest lights. All these things become embodied in the understanding of how a light source dictates line weight and how it becomes magical. And you can use that to put a lot of spirit in your sketches. They're not static, they're extremely dynamic. And I think that's a great thing about the drawing process. Everything we do should have a whole spirit or a soul about it because it comes from us. That's how we see things. And that's how we begin to illustrate our thoughts. Let me go back and now that's linear. Let's try this. And I put a little theme together here. Now, when you go round, for example, or organic, that's where it gets really tricky. Now, again, notice, you come back in through here, you lay down the platform. I'm going to run again, this now becomes my major axis. This is major. And this becomes my minor axis. Those are critical because that'll tell us how to set these things up. In doing automobile design, for example, really notice how critical it is to understand how these majors and minors work in developing round organic shapes or body forms, or also even a tire geometry or wheels is incredibly powerful. I have this distinction oftentimes, of reviewing portfolios, and there's nothing more tragic than to see a young person go through school after spending 5, 6, 7 years in perfecting the discipline with a very poor understanding of how circles work, because they're being taught that they're ellipses, and they're not. It's a circle in perspective, which again, you set it up by doing the face of a cube, find the major axis, and then in this one, for example, the minor axis running through. And the reason you can justify that is always remember this very solid, undeniable truth. The minor axis goes back to vanishing point right or left in the case of a cube. Same with this. There's the major axis, always runs it vertically. And again, the minor axis goes back in this case to vanishing point left. If I put another face out here, that minor axis will go right back to vanishing point right. So that's the distinction we want to make here. Now, when you go back and utilize this, again, let's draw that circle in place here. Hit the contact points. hit that point, that, and that. So I'll come back in and now notice, using the same thing about line weight magic, now turn it upside down and really thrust in. Let me do this for a moment here. This section right in through here is coming closest to me. As it fades away, I'm going to let it go. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to turn it around. Once it's developed that form, as it comes to me, thick to thin. As it goes away, let it fade, let it fade. And that's all I need. I mean, look at the weight change there. And now that tells me where the drama is coming from. Closest to me, let it fade away. Closest to me, let it fade away. And again, same thing when you go vertical here. Let's do this. Let's put that circle in place up here. Let's do this. Lay that in place. Now, closest to me is right here. It's going to come up into that axis. Let me turn this around a bit here. Rotate out of it as it comes through here. And let it fade. And look at the difference in the weights there. And again, let it fade. A little bit of a touch here, there, and there, and there. And look at the difference in the drama there. Closest to me, since I'm standing right on that leading edge, this is going to be closest to me, as is this here. That line is closest to me. This becomes closest to me. Everything that's closest to me as it begins to fade away. Notice, dark, light, back to, again, let it fade. It gives a sense of perspective to it with a very little amount of effort. So that's just a basic overview of how to work with perspective and how these line weights begin to really emphasize the shape and character of our sketches. And we can utilize these weights to really put a lot of spirit and personality back into our work, which I think is absolutely critical. A sketch is not just a line drawing. It's a mirror image of how you feel about what your work is and what it's like. So let me just put this aside for a moment, and we'll put that over here. And we'll come right back at it here for just a second. There it is. We'll get rid of that guy. Come back in. Thank you. I just put again another series of little some basic format sketches here to kind of show you how things begin to change. Again, closest to me. Weight it up. Let it fade. Weight it up. Let it fade. No need to hit the backside. I can get back in here and add shape to it. Let's put a little bit of contour in this thing. Again, closest to me. Let it fade away. Over here, just indicate a couple little ticky marks there. Look at the shape that all of a sudden it's got some spirit to it and some real genuine life. We're going to go back in again. Let's take this guy. A little bit of a fillet there. Fine. Come back in with a little secondary line. Again, go across. Take it back up along the shape. Again, a lot of weight. Thick into thin. The same process here. Thick into thin. Now let's change this. Let's put this into place here. Again, thick, thin. Again, shadow. Home. Into the fillet. And then back home again. I mean, look at the difference, hopefully, in personality in that sketch. Just add a little line back here. Keep it fade. Into fade, and then show what that section is doing. I mean, look at the difference in that little thumbnail sketch of how line weight can really influence how we see certain things. And again, all part of the whole process here. Very interesting thing to deal with. Let's go back into here. Another example. Come back in here. Now again, round shape. So I'm standing right here. If I were to put a box around this thing, my leading edge is right here. So I'm going to come back in and hit this thing with, again, thick. Back to thin. Again, I'm going to turn this right side up here. Turn it the other way. Come right back at me. Thick. Into thin. Let it fade. Again, giving a little bit of personality. Finish it out here. Again, there it is. Come back over the top of this thing with another line. Form. Let's put a little bit of parabolic curve in this thing. Draw through it lightly. And again, same process. Come back up to here, closest to me. A lot of weight. As I move away from it, let it fade. Just let it fade. Come back in, adjust just a bit. There are the weight changes thereafter. Let's get that transition a little bit better through here. And there it is there. Again, into a fillet across the face of this thing, that's fine. Let's take that spine line right through here. We want to add something back in through here. Again, let's put a little bit more emphasis. If there's a little bit more emphasis back in through here, again, same weights. And again, it just gives you a little bit of a personality. Let's put that secondary line in there and let it fade right into that radius. There it is. Now again, closest to me, fade back. Hot spot, hotspot, highlight again, just to indicate where those little, look at the character in that sketch, hopefully begin to see how it all begins to function. Now let's say there's something you want to add to it. If you want to drive through this thing again, add to the sketch and begin to add something like this. Drive through the drive line here. Again, closest to me. Closest to me. A little bit of shadow over the top of this form here. Screen shapes using line weight. Pardon me. Go back in here again. Let's let that fade. And there's a fast analytical sketch of how that begins to work in terms of putting line weight together and how the weights all begin to put a certain amount of energy or empathy or personality in your sketches. So critical, I think. You need to really begin to look at this, and I'm going to rephrase that. It's always good to put your soul in every effort you have. It's not just a drawing. It has a certain personality about it that can become part of the whole process about seeing things. These are not objects that I'm dealing with. I'm just trying to illustrate here what the drama of line weight does when you begin to look at it from the fundamental beginning of the whole process and get into perspective and how they begin to influence what these edges and what the leading edge tells us to do. Closest to me, closest to me, closest to me. Even on the round forms, extremely powerful stuff to work with here. So again, part of the whole process is just put some, today's stream is to just introduce what this whole magic of line weight does for us. Now in the next few streams, we're going to be taking to more complicated surfaces like product design, some transportation design, and just go back to some good old fundamental thinking about what line does for us and how it begins to really put a lot of really good spirit in our work. So we're going to go back to this last little illustration, and I've got some work I want to show you here just to kind of emphasize this whole idea of line weight and even working with a ballpoint pen. So let's go back in through here. And again, let's power this up. Closest to me. I can come out of this thing, find the center line. I am. Begin to break the shape up a bit. Add another element out here. And go back into this round. Find my center, major axis, my minor axis, and put that circle in place. And again, closest to me, right here. And let it fade away. As I come back up to this, put a little more emphasis in this thing. There it is there. I'm going to come off of this normal. There it is there. Now come forward on this. Same process again. Underneath, in the shadow, reflected light. Back into form. Add surface back here. Change the form a bit here. And again, closest to me. Wait. As I go back into shape here. Just let that fade into here. Again, take this around the corner. Split this shape up a bit here. Weight up. And weight right through it. And just offset this just a bit. And by putting a little bit of tone in here, look how those weights really begin to dictate what the shape is doing. All of a sudden, it's got some real hopefulness and personality to it. And one of the nice things about this whole idea of line weight is you can now, instead of outlining everything in the same way, notice how the weights, the lines change tempo, north, south, east, and west. It's fluid. It doesn't stay in one real category of line here. I'll show you in a moment what the difference might be between the two. As far as using line weight as a real method of expression, and the other line drawing, it just flattens things out. It just takes all the spirit out of our sketches. We don't want to do that. So again, a lot of weight here changes. You can also take that same process and have a lot of fun with this and again, instead of outlining everything, use a little bit of a window back here. Do the following. Let negative space like this, for example, come back in and emphasize positive space. That prevents an awful lot of the same outlining here that we talked about just a few moments ago, and how that begins to now a little bit of shadow underneath here and through here. Add more detail. You can add to that. And just a little touch of here and there. And all of a sudden, that shape has taken on some personality that has really dwells in the area and the realm of line weight. Line weight to me is extremely powerful. I mean, you can't get by, for example, without it. It's just a really incredibly powerful tool. Let me put that aside for a moment. And I just got a fresh sheet of paper here. What I'm referring to is this: if you took a sketch and did the following here, let's use this guy as an example. If you did that same drawing like this, and I'm certainly not going to be critical here, I'm just trying to point out the difference between the two. Let's try this. I'm going to come back in here. And if I were to set up the same sketch and did this, and I reproduce that drawing and kept everything in the same line weight, what would happen, for example, if I did this? Where it's all the same weight, and I can't even draw like that, honestly. It just slows me down to no end. But what if I did that? You be the judge of this. Look at this. All the line weights remain the same. To me, that just has absolutely no personality whatsoever. I mean, that's void of, that's just outlining a shape. That's not giving it personality. It's not giving it impact. And I think when we sell something, for example, to a client, I mean, that drama is everything. You know, the emotion you put in your sketches can influence a yay or nay in a project. I mean, I've seen that over 1,000 times. I mean, your spirit of your sketches will really sell what you have to do to deal with. And I think the more you delve in the arenas of getting into things like this with some real spirit behind it, it's incredible what that does for us. So, and again, I just hope I don't insult it. It's not intended to insult anybody here at all. But look at the difference in those two sketches, for example. One with line weight as a magical component, one with just being a line drawing. It's obvious. No spirit whatsoever. So let's put that aside for just a second here. And I'm going to come right back to this. Let's go back and put another thing together. Let's just do a little rapid sketch here. Real lightly, working through it. Again, same principle. Notice, leading edge, hit it. Let it fade. Come back upside down here. Rotate through it and let it fade. Pick up that same character line here. Closest to me. Closest to me again. Hit it. Let it fade. Very little emphasis there. Again, closest to me. Across the top of the shape. into that little valley. A little bit of illustration work here underneath this thing. Into this belly here, since it's away from me, but it's still my thrust line. I'm gonna come back and hit it and let it fade into this. Again, closest to me is right there. Again, in there. A little bit of tone work. A bit of this and the highlight. When that surface kind of changes pace. There it is there. Changing the shape as you go. I mean, look at the adjustments you can make as a result of keeping line weights. Thick, thin, a little bit of tone. Darkest closest to me as it goes back in here and just fades. It's not an object. I'm just trying to illustrate what that surface is doing here. It's going to put a little more emphasis in that guy. And there it is. Now look how simple that sketch all came together as a result of just using line weight as a theme of getting things closest to us. So really kind of let the rest of this thing fade. It's an amazing process. And again, you can go back into here and just really hammer down on some of the darkest darks and the lightest lights. I really put a lot of emphasis on this thing. A little bit of reflected light in there, and that's it. A little bit of hot spot right there. Tell you where the edge is. I mean, notice I'm not lining everything up. I'm just letting the whole thing breathe just a little bit. It's just been really, it's interesting again how the whole thing begins to function. And I'm going to stop here for a moment and just go back in again and review just a few things that we started with. And I think it's really critical that we look at this stuff. I started with this. And I think it's essential to go back in and review why these things like line weight and why it becomes so magical. Basic perspective understanding. Get the frames down. Flat surface horizontally. Notice again, my leading edge is right here. So that's my leading edge, which tells me those lines there are closest to me. So I'm going to beef them up. Same thing, horizontally. Now go vertical, same thing. The leading edge is right here. So closest to me, there it is. I begin to stretch that up. Adding a form to it. Closest to me, thick to nothing, thick to nothing. Just let it fade. Gives more drama. It gives more of a sense of ethereal perspective, which I think is really incredible. Great tool to work with here. Again, going from rectangular or solid objects, the non-organic and the organic materials. Notice when you get into circles, whole different matter. Man, I mean, you talk about change of pace. Now you've got things that are coming through here with major and minor axes. Closest to me, right here. Hit it. Thick and thin, thick to thin. Thick to thin. Same thing when it's standing upright. Closest to me, hit right here. Here's my leading edge. And in this case right here, this is why this is interesting. Let me just show you this here. This now becomes, I can validate that closest to me principle in this particular thumbnail sketch here, because this now is my leading edge. Now that's closest to me. As it begins to fade away, it's just going to move away. I'm standing right here, so it's going to come around the corner to give me more dimension, and then begin to fade into space. That was one example, and that's how we started. And using perspective as a tool to get the magic of line weight to work for us. And again, the thick and thin philosophy, this whole idea of having it echo through space is amazing to me. It's a great tool to work with. There I am there. There's one. Then we went to this little scenario where we actually came back to, again, platforms, how to deal with that, how to get thickened things to work with, and just using line weight to put some real strength and character into our sketches. Pardon me. Grab a pencil here. And again, went 1 or 2, 3, and I did this little sketch. And then just to show you the difference here and variation on theme, went back and did this guy here, just kind of balance it out. What would be more effective in terms of line drawing? Yeah, this is a line drawing, but it lacks character. It has no soul. This does have some soul. You know, we can go back and further in and show you some sketch running work I'll show you in a moment here. And again, just again, a little thumbnail sketch, letting the paper work for us. Notice we're not filling everything in. Every one of the sketches I've showed you with line weight, we're not filling it all in, making it dark and light and overwhelming and looming and just kind of a gloomy approach to it, but a very high-spirited, energetic approach to putting sketches together, which I think is absolutely paramount. So there I am there and the second thing we did. And then I'm just going to switch gears. And I put some pieces together earlier today to show you and emphasize just simple geometry sketches here on how this whole principle series begins to work. Let me get rid of these guys, then we'll bring these in. These are sketches that I just put together that emphasize primarily round forms like organic shapes like circles and perspective, extremely difficult to work with. These are quickly done just to emphasize. I'll use this pen here as an indicator. Again, I'm going to show you when you construct the sketch how, again, notice closest to me, let it fade, closest to me, let it fade. Every one of these sketches, again, every little theme sketch or change of direction has an emphasis on it, and it's dark against light and the thick against thin. So these are 1, 2, 4 sketches here. And then when you go into a little bit of surface work, again, same process. Notice, again, the whole idea of light source out here, highlight in the little bit of core in the reflected light, and again, secondary core back here. So that was another little family of sketches that we did here. Just really rapid little ballpoint pen sketches. Then I went into full circle here with, again, notice where the emphasis is on these sketches. Again, notice, I can't stress enough, again, circle. If I were to lay that in there, now it's this coming through. Then as it comes around the bend, closest to me, it hits. Why is it not here? Because if I put all my emphasis right here, it flattens out that circle. I just move it to the right or left. In this case, away from the light source, really push it in there, thick to thin, thick to thin, thick to thin. And again, notice closest to me, thick to thin. Even though they're balanced, I'm making selections here along the way to give these things some real emphasis. So these are little studies here in terms of getting those without filling the eye in. You can foreclose that they're cylindrical in shape, or they're modified cylinders, which I think is really neat to work with. And again, look this guy. Again, shape down, core coming in, a little bit of this. Now notice a feature line, thick to thin, into shadow, thick to thin, letting it move through space and giving it some personality. Same thing here. Notice thick to thin, round shapes. Don't have to keep the same line weight going through the whole process. And then here's a little series of little thumbnail sketches emphasizing the same principle about putting pieces together and emphasizing, again, those even this complex, again, simple thing like it, the little change of pace here, this line right here, really begins to open it up. All I wanted to show was that little weight change here, thick to thin, using line weight again to develop the form. So let's move along here. Next sketch was, next sketch is this one. Again, I really selected here today to kind of go back to basic geometry, just basic round forms, because those guys are tough to do, man. I mean, the more we work with these guys, the tougher it becomes. Notice, again, I'm really emphasizing the circle phenomenon here to get the whole idea across. About my leading edge is, if I were to put a frame around this and an edge, it's right in through here, and this is thick, closest to me, fade away, closest to me, fade away, closest to me, fade away. It gives it more personality. Now, do you have to draw through the whole process? No, but when you do a finished piece, like for example this one, notice I'm just hitting a little bit of an area and coming in and showing where that concept line is, that real strong theme line, and I'm really putting a lot of weight behind that thick and thin and line weight to let it justify its shape itself. Now, notice this one, same thing. A lot of emphasis up and through here, the weight changes, and a little weight change down here, and again, the whole process down below kind of gives it some more volumetric. It just looks like it, you mean it. And I think that's the thing that I want to stress too throughout this entire presentation today and today's stream and then future ones to come, how really important it is to put your whole heart and soul into your sketches and give them some character. Put your personality into it, and then that's a salesmanship phenomenon. I've used this thing for years, and it just has worked so well. I'm still learning about it. Don't misunderstand me. I'm still really putting pieces together that I'm really clueless about, but I'm learning and I explore certain things. I make mistakes all the time, but I just come back and recover the fact that, this has worked, that has not worked. But one thing is, I'm sure that has been time immemorial, is the understanding and the balance and the power found in the magic of line weight. It's just incredible how it all begins to function. So there's a family of sketches there based on, again, the same principle about line weight thrust. Another little family of forms are just simple little elegant shapes. I mean, look how simple they are, but I'm emphasizing every single one of these volumes with a little bit of line weight change, a little bit of geometry, not killing the form, just emphasize it. And then especially here, look at this, thick thin to thick into a contour change. And while I'm at it, you can actually look at this from the point of view of, yes, closest to us, we can hit it up, really emphasize and really beef up the line weights and let them fade away in space. But also, if you have a character line change, that can be a thick and thin example as well. Character line meaning something like this. Now, I'd consider that a character line. You can use that same phenomenon of thick and thin to kind of emphasize what the character lines are. Notice this one too, a little bit of a character line. So you can utilize it not only as an expression of line, but as also an expression of form and how to develop shape and form all simultaneously. If you're going to put the whole sketch you're dealing with into a certain scenario of some compatibility that really sympathizes the whole thing and puts it all together. A little ballpoint pen and little Tuscan red pencil sketches. Again, notice all the emphasis on that whole idea of a character line into circles into a character line. Character line back into circles up on top. Character line again, just an interesting set of menus changes here. Now let's go back to these. One more application here. Putting a product together where you combine volume, like a geometric shape, for example, a cylindrical form, or a conical shape with a rectangular shape. Again, notice the same emphasis is coming together. All the line weights. I'm really emphasizing the strength of the constitution of the shapes by getting into, again, the thick and thin, the core lines, that character line change, and a little bit of section study, and then showing where the highlight lines are, using, again, line weight to make that change of pace come together. And again, this is a very simple, fast sketch here. Just, again, emphasizing even little detail things. Look at this, how you go from dark to light. Again, dark to light. The whole rhythm is established in that whole process. I think it was really neat. I think one of the great things I've learned over the years working with Sid Mead was a very simple treatise that he had a great sense of understanding not only what line weight does, but put it into some sort of a rhythmic context by stating this: darkest darks next to lightest lights. No matter where you go in a sketch, whether you go north or south, east or west, it always comes down to a rhythm change. For example, notice this: darkest darks next to lightest lights, next to light, darkest darks next to lights, dark, light, down to dark. I mean, the whole pattern. Again, look at this: light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. I mean, the whole process changes emphatically, and it really gives a sense of cohesiveness to a drawing, whether it's a minor sketch or a major sketch, whether it's a very complicated piece or a very simplified piece, does not matter. Line weight will be a great victorious dictorium when you work with it well. So let's go back to this guy. I have to change paces here in the next sketch. Some little speaker faces, just very simple, fast sketches again. Pardon me as I go through this whole bit. Pardon me. Again, notice emphasizing a character line with line weight. I mean, the magic of that stuff just comes together nicely, and then putting some of the pieces together again, thick and thin, a little bit of tone. Again, same process, dark to light, and the whole pattern comes through again with the idea of getting into this whole process of dealing with line weight changes. Notice, even as simple as this might be, look at that, just emphasizing that front plate, the definition phase. Again, thick again, nothing back here. I just let that whole thing fade into space, and it gives it some more dimension. Same with this one. Notice closest to me, a lot of dark emphasis as it goes back in space. A little bit of emphasis here, but it's not really the same weight change as this. The dynamic of line, there's a tempo change. I think that's the most important facet of all. There's a tempo change that takes place with the understanding of line weight and the magic of line weight that gives a sketch a lot of personality. Again, sort of be redundant, but I really want to get that point across here today in the stream. What does line weight do mostly for us? It puts spirit into our sketches. It gives them spizorinctum, which is life. I mean, it really jumps off the page. And if we don't have line weight rhythm, all of a sudden things flatten out. I mean, wonder why we're not really getting into a lot of real enthusiasm about our work. And I'm not being critical of your work at all. Please don't misunderstand. But line weight is an incredibly powerful tool. It also will help you do this. The more you understand line weight, the more you take advantage of simplifying your renderings and make them much more cohesive. I mean, look at some of my work in past streams. There's not a lot of stuff going on in the rendering. It's a lot of line work that really kind of put it all together. I've always said this from day one on Twitch and on stream program. It begins with drawing and it ends with drawing. Drawing literally becomes a vehicle of success, not rendering skills. I don't think I've gone to a store yet, for example, and I've bought a marker that is a Ferrari bright red, and I use that, and that just paints a Ferrari without doing any work behind it. You have to labor at it and work at it, and that's the whole idea of what line weight does for us. Line weight eliminates the labor, amplifies the impact, and solidifies the whole salesmanship philosophy that you're trying to appeal with your clients. It works every single time. It's magical. So let's go back to this next one here. This little sketch, another product development piece. It's just kind of a simple little speaker system, maybe. Again, a little plan view drawing, just kind of show you where the emphasis, where the wings kind of fold up and where the actual emphasis of the weights and the lines are. And also come right back in, for example, a little perspective sketch. Notice I'm really kind of showing the client where that geometry begins to break and how this thing steps out a little bit. I didn't emphasize this, but I really want to sell this. And again, up on top where the line changes and where the form changes from flat surface to radius and all the elements that go with it there. So that's just basically the counterpoint of what we're after here. And again, the starting or the beginning of today's stream was to really focus in on a very simple yet elementary. I could have started, for example, with 1 or 2 point perspective, but I'll get into that a bit later. But I think it really is more paramount to go back in and really establish this whole new lesson plan, or this whole new process of the streams, for example, to come, of one very vital thing, and that is the idea of getting line weights to work for us. Let me just put these back in context here, and we'll get them all lined up. Pardon me here, folks. There it is. So let's get those back into place. So those are the little series of sketches we did to emphasize this line weight stuff. And I really wanted to focus mostly on round surfaces. That's where most of us have our difficulty. Now, truth be told, extremely difficult how we work with that. And again, we went back to these. This is our basically how we started. We started with these sketches here, for example, showing where the platforms are, horizontal, a vertical platform, then into rounds, just breaking the geometry down in a basic perspective, and how we actually functioned with that. And again, showing, again, my leading edge is right here. That's where I'm standing. So these lines at this intersection, this is closest to me. Hit it. Really beef it up and let it fade back in space. Gives it more drama. Let it disappear. It gives more ethereal perspective involved in this thing. Same with this vertical. Closest to me, hit it back, thick to thin, and really emphasize that shape. And again, round forms, for example, circles, much more dramatic. My leading edge is here, so therefore it's darkest here, light as it moves, it fades away from me. That's past the threshold here, it just goes to light. Same with this, standing upright. Closest to me, let it fade away. It gives you much more drama to deal with here. Let's just say that was the first sketch I did. That's where I started. Then went back in this couple little thumbnail sketches. Whoops, right side up. That'll help. Get those guys to put together. A couple little thumbnail sketches to show you again what line weight does for us in a horizontal platform. Adding, so we started with this guy and I added this form to it. Gives it a little more magic to it. Again, notice every case, there's so much paper coming through that gives it life. We're not filling it all in. We're letting the line do the work for us. Same with this one. And then the last one I did here was a little bit of a comparison here, so I hope not to insult anybody, but that's where we went to, which is more entertaining, more energetic. That approach or this approach? Yes, this is a line drawing, but it has no soul. It's dead. And I'm not being critical of those of us who work like that. Please don't misunderstand. My task today is to help us get out of the format of being so linear and so outlined and so outside the realm of putting our soul into our work that it slows us all down and it kind of solidifies or stagnates our work. This never stagnates. Line weight never stagnates. It just moves through space. It animates space. It puts action into it, and it gives it spirit. Interesting thing. And again, from that little sketch, I went back into this little thumbnail study here. Again, using line weight as an example. Again, always emphasizing closest to me, letting the backside. And look at the difference in the line weight between this approach here and the backside line. Very simple fade. Gives it more character. So that's where we were, gang. Pardon me here. Then I went back. Let's get these out of the way. I'm going to stack them all up. And I hope this has been helpful to you here today. It certainly has been for me. I'm going to pick this thing up again probably on Monday, or probably Tuesday of next week, and take a little further, getting a little more, get past the fundamental truth here of perspective, how it begins to function, and then maybe picking up on Tuesday, getting a more compound form. Maybe take a vehicle of some sort or a product of some sort and just do a whole family of studies on line weight changes, not doing rendering work, but line weight, then slowly show you how that begins to facilitate itself and how it begins to implement itself into the power of the drama of doing really good comprehensive sketches. And I think most of you will agree with me too. Most of the work we do, most of the work I do with my clients, I do a lot of work with sketches first. Putting ideas together, just real fast concept sketches like these I showed you here today. That becomes an extremely powerful opening act, so to speak, when you're working with a client base, no matter what the scale of the company is, big or small. The more action you have in your sketches, the more you begin to sell that management of the fact that you know your craft, that you have a character about yourself, that you care about what you do and what they're asking you to do. That's a huge difference here. It does not look like you're non-committal. You're very committed by the nature of your sketches. You're very committed by the presence you make, and when you walk into the room, you begin to own it. And I think that's really critical. Now, I'll just add this to it as well. I think one of the great comments made during my years at CCS, when I was with Sid Mead and that tremendous faculty at the Center for Creative Studies in Detroit, Michigan, the comment Sid Mead lived in infamy with me. I've kept it with me all these days, and I've never forgot it. In our sophomore year in Transportation 1, he came in and he sat us down and he said, gentlemen, would you like to see reality? Oh yeah, man, it'd be really cool. Let's take a look at reality. Long pause, and Sid looked at it and said, terrific, go buy a camera. That has never changed the impact it had on me from the point of view of a drawing perspective. What Sid was saying was, yeah, you can have a camera, you can create reality, but our task is to put our personality into our work that changes the whole paradigm of not being photographic. It becomes much more aesthetic. And I think that I'll never forget that comment. It was just incredibly powerful. If you want to see creativity, yeah. You want to see it? Yeah, go buy a camera. But if you want to create it, that's a whole different process. That's what we're talking about here today. That's what line weight does for us. We're creating our own drama. We're putting our own camera into action, our own minds into action, and creating what we see and how we begin to take that into fruition and develop it for our clients, no matter what they are, mighty or meager, doesn't matter. We're putting our soul into our work, and it's not a camera. It's a mind that is extremely expansive, looking at fluidity and lucidity throughout the process. So just great to work with here today, gang. And again, I'll wrap it up here today with that. And again, if you have a moment, please drop me a note about the A's and A's if you like this. If there's something you want to pick up on that I missed here today, drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. Happy to respond to you. While I'm at it as well, please tune into my website at drcontrast.com. You'll find that to be extremely, hopefully, helpful to you. There's a 9-drawing program in there. We're adding to that. By the way, on my website, you'll notice my YouTube page, Instagram is on there, my Twitch material is on there, and my store is on there. We're adding a lot of things to our store. New apparel coming on board, so stay tuned to that, and we'll keep you posted as we begin to add things down the line as we go here. A lot of exciting stuff going on here, but I thought, again, today, after the last 4 or 5 weeks, hey, Demetrius, I love the explanation today on the line weight. That's great. Thanks, Demetrius. That's terrific. Glad to have you on board, man. Always good to see you being part and active. Yeah, line weight, Demetrius, is everything. It just, you can't get past it, for example, in terms of its emphasis. And I think we're going to go back into this thing on Tuesday, take it a little further. And if it helps you at all, Demetrius, I'll go back and do some transportation stuff. Just again, if you have any questions at all or things you want me to work on in the next few days before Tuesday of next week, let me know. But the whole idea, again, about line weight, it's not just a drawing. To me, I've never done something, for example, on a sheet of paper. To me, that's a drawing. To me, it's our soul on paper. It's our spirit. How do we feel about what we see? How do we feel about what we do? How do we feel about working with clients? How do we feel about working with individuals? That's all part of the process, and that's where, to me, that's what the success is. Success is not on what you do, for example, with paper and pencils and medium. Success is how you work with people, how you interact with them. And they'll sense right away if you're for real or not. They will know, for example, by the nature of your sketches. They will know you by your disposition. And that's what these line weight studies are going to help us do. So thanks very much, Demetrius, for the conversation and the statement. Really helpful. Pardon me. And last but not least, again, please visit the website at drcontrast.com. And we're adding things to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm supposed to have some things coming in today, tomorrow to look at, some additional apparel stuff. Once we approve it, we get up on the website and get this thing active. We'll keep you posted. And I hope all of you are really had a lot of fun with this today. I know I did. It's just nice to go back into refresher systems here. And I'm going to take the next few streams to really kind of focus in on things like line weight, basic perspective, into volumetrics, into light source, and how these things begin to act. Go back and review that again and begin to build an anthem and a good foundation of a strong security for our sketch rendering work and our illustration work. So stay tuned, gang. It's going to be a lot of fun. And last but not least, I always really finish with this because I think it's an absolute powerful statement, and I believe it with all my heart. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great day. We'll see you next Tuesday with line weight part 2. We'll get a little further with this thing, get more complicated shape to deal with. And then Demetrius, thanks so much for joining forces today. Always an honor to have you on board, and I'm so glad we reconnected and you're having fun with this stuff. Take care and all the best, gang. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.